Welcome to the Dayton Art Institute's Retrofit, turning today's clothes into period costumes. Hello, I am A.M. Wood, a museum educator at the Dayton Art Institute. I will be your instructor in this video series, Retrofit, where we take modern-day clothing and alter them into historical or fantastical costumes. Supplies needed include a calf-length skirt or dress with a full skirt and a knee-length dress with short sleeves. You will also need a piece of quilted fabric, white and color fabric, 2 socks, grosgrain or shoelaces, ribbon, lace, cardboard, and fiberfill. Sewing supplies include a hand sewing needle, thread, straight pins, heavy and fabric scissors. Sewing machine optional. To add lace to the sleeve, take your lace, make sure you have the right side up, and fold over the edge of the lace. Then match that fold to the seam in the underside of the sleeve. Pin it into place, and then working your way around the sleeve, make sure again that you have the lace right side up. Pin it just under the edge of your sleeve fabric. When you reach the end, you can just tuck it under the folded edge of the fabric, and then you can either hand sew this on, and you can also sew shut this little flap connecting the edges of the lace. We are going to start sewing right where that underarm seam is, where we layered our lace. And again, make sure to do a few back stitches. Make sure not to run over your pins. Make sure you're removing them right before you get to them. And then again, we are lining this up so that the edge of the fabric is lining up with the inside edge of the presser foot. If you have a heavier fabric or one that likes to kind of shift on you, you can also line up with the outside edge of the presser foot, just depending on what your needs are. To make a ribbon drape, get the overdress, and we are going to measure down from the waistband 4 different spots where we're going to add ribbon. So we are going to measure down about 6 to 8 inches and do a matching area, 2 spots on the front of the skirt. So make a snip about 6 to 8 inches down, and then again we are going to do the same, evenly spaced on the skirt front and back. After you've made your slits, get a piece of ribbon, and we are going to pull the ribbon through the hole we've made, gather up our skirt fabric, and then tie the ribbons evenly to hold the drape. I like to knot it just so that it doesn't come off, and then make a bow or leave dangling as desired. And then we are going to repeat that with the slits we made, the other slit in the front and the 2 slits in the back, and we will have a beautiful ribbon drape on our dress. And again, you're just going to pull the ribbon through, gather up the fabric, get the ribbon ends even, and tie it down. Make a knot if desired, and then make a bow. Make hip padding. You need 2 old mismatched socks. These ones are pretty gnarly. They used to be my son's. And then you're going to pin them together right at the toe and sew them together on your machine or by hand if you prefer. So with our socks connected at the toes, we are going to go ahead and stuff both of the socks. When we stuff these, we want them to kind of maintain as even of a stuffing as possible. We don't want it super hard as a rock firm. We want there to be some give in there. Now that we are nicely stuffed, You can pin in some grosgrain ribbon, or you can use some wide shoelaces and you can pin those into the opening on your socks. And then we are going to go ahead and get some scissors to trim off the excess. We want enough to be able to tie around our waist. Go ahead and sew your straps into place. Don't forget your back stitch. Don't forget not to go over your pins. And don't forget your back stitch once more. Repeat for the other opening of the sock as well. To make the stomacher, we are going to lay our cardboard on the front of the dress and basically draw a wedge shape that is larger at the top and smaller at the bottom. Stomachers were used inside fabric to basically cover the opening of how individuals got in and out of the dress. We're going to go ahead and, using our non-sewing scissors, trim down our cardboard. If you have any rough edges, you are welcome to trim those down as well. We are going to use our cardboard as a pattern to trace the stomacher onto our quilted piece of fabric. Now when we cut this initial piece out, we are going to be leaving a border around it when we cut of about 1 inch. So again, repeat, do not cut on the line, cut about 1 inch around where the cardboard was traced. We will then flip this piece of fabric over onto the blue and use it as our outline, as our pattern. But this time we can cut, when we go to cut this out, we can cut directly on the line that we drew. And there we have our front and our back for our stomacher. Now we get to the fun part of decorating our stomacher. So on the quilted piece of material, we are going to pin diagonal lines with our ribbon. And we are just going to pin with the pins sticking off the edge of either side of the fabric so they're easy to remove. And we are just going to try and evenly space parallel lines with our ribbon. So again, try to pin evenly spaced apart and try and keep your pin heads off the edge of the fabric so they are easy to pull out, because we will be sewing this eventually from the opposite side. And then once you have gotten the parallel lines, we are going to go ahead and make the line to cross them. Now here's where our weaving comes into place. We are going to go under our first piece of ribbon and pin it at the top. And then we are going to go over the next row, under the next, over, under, over, under, and pin. With the piece of ribbon next to it, we are going to do the opposite. So if we started under, we're going to start over, and vice versa. So you just want to make sure that whatever the ribbon directly next to it is doing, you are doing the opposite. And you're going to repeat that with the remaining ribbon until we've basically completed the stomacher. When we sew, again, we're going to line up the inside edge of our presser foot with the outside edge of the fabric. If you have a real thick or temperamental fabric, you can use the outside edge of the foot. We are just doing this to kind of hold these ribbons in place so they don't shift when we are adding more layers to our garment. I find if I pin and then sew single layers at a time, there's less shifting. When you get to the edges, you can leave your needle in the fabric, raise your presser foot, and then you can be able to pivot and continue. Just don't forget to put that presser foot back down. To add the lace, we are going to find the line that we've just sewn and put nice sides to nice sides, right side to right side, and we're going to line up the edge of our lace with the line we have just sewn. This is sort of a cheating way to make sure that we don't have stitching lines showing when we go to flip it. So go ahead and pin, again matching to that line that we have just sewn, around the edge of your stomacher. You can kind of cheat the corners and gather them in a little bit so they don't get pinched when you're turning around to sew them. And once you have that pinned around, you can either hand sew or you can put it under your sewing machine. We are going to sew along the inside edge here of the lace again, so when we flip things you're not having edges show that you don't want to. So line up your needle so it goes in right where that line is, and you can either move your needle or you can just find a spot to watch. Looks like we're pretty close to, again, inside edge of the presser foot matching. Now we are going to layer the blue piece of fabric that we cut previously over our design, keeping the lace facing towards the inside of the stomacher, and again keeping our pins far enough out so we can see them to pull them. And then we are going to sew, following the line we've already done, around the outermost edges, leaving the top open, the wider part open, so that we have a place that we can slide that cardboard through. So we are just going to sew from here around to here. So again, line your needle up with the line that we've already sewn. Make sure that your pins are far enough out that you can grab them, but we're going to line that up and then put our needle down right into that line of stitching. Don't forget to do your back stitch. And don't forget we are leaving that top edge open. So we're sewing down one side, across the narrower part that is the bottom, back up the other side. Then we're going to back stitch and leave that top open. Using scissors carefully, we are going to trim around the bottom and side edges. We are also going to trim the top edge, but we are still going to leave it a little bit wider so we have some to turn and tuck inside. And then we're going to pull it right side out. Flip it back over, slide your cardboard in. Make sure you get it all the way down to the bottom and that it's evenly spaced. And then we are going to tuck first the lining edge and then the front side edge in around the cardboard, and then we're going to pin it shut. Shouldn't need too many pins here because we're going to sew this by hand. But again, we're tucking the lining fabric and then tucking the front fabric. And then we are going to hand sew this shut after we pinned it. Now I am going through part of the lace and part of the lining, so this will not show in any way from the front. I am using the kind of bound edge of the lace to go through. You will be able to see on your fabric what's easiest to go through. Then I'm just going to go ahead and use a quick whip stitch to close this end nicely. Again, there's no pressure on these seams. This isn't really something that is going to get stretched by the body, so a quick stitch will do it, and I'm just checking to make sure that I don't get any stitches on the front half when I do that. When I get to the edge of the fabric, I'm going to use that finishing stitch I showed you. So you basically take a stitch into the fabric, leaving the loop. Put one hand through the loop and the other hand grabs the needle. Then pull some thread through the loop. Do it again and pull it all the way down again, down to the fabric. And then at this time pull the needle through. It'll drag all your stitches down and you'll have a triple knot right down there. Cut it off and you are finished. Now to make a bow, tie a knot, and then you can just make a little loop, wrap around, make another little loop by pushing some of the ribbon through the hole, pull both ends tight. And then you can go ahead and pin that at the top of your stomacher where the fabric and ribbon meets the lace. And we're going to pin that on so it doesn't wiggle on us, and then we are just going to hand stitch that down. So I usually just go through the stomacher and then through the underside, the little knot that we tied in the ribbon, so then you're not having any thread go through the ribbon itself. I'm just going through the knot, so again that doesn't show. Half of sewing is just hiding your stitches. So you can use your fancy finishing knot, finish it off, trim the thread, to where you are going to take the hip padding and you're going to tie it around your waist so it sits just on your hips, and you're going to layer your longer dress over it, the one with the fuller skirt, so it will extend the hips. Then your overdress, the dress worn over, you are going to put on, and then you are going to take a shawl. I cut a baby blanket in half to make mine, and you are going to tuck the edges of the shawl with the long part of the triangle. You're going to tuck those edges into the blouse, or you can hide them behind the stomacher, whichever you prefer. I believe when I wore mine, I tucked it. You're just going to hide the ends of that. And then you are going to take your stomacher, and you can use a straight pin, you can use a safety pin, or you could actually tack these on. I'm going to demonstrate using a straight pin, but for safety purposes I would use a safety pin, and that way you can switch it out and be like, oh no, this is a totally new outfit. So again, I just did, when I wore it, I did the top 2 corners, and then I moved it and did the bottom 2 corners. And there you have your completed Rococo Shepherdess.
If you enjoy what you see here, be sure to visit our Learning Library online, which can be found on the digital resources page of our website, DaytonArtInstitute.org.
Thank you for making art with us today.